So I think we're going to get into a little provocative, and, but at the same time, most relevant thing that every student or every educator must be aware of or must be knowing. We're living in a world where artificial intelligence is writing code, creating music, diagnosing diseases, even it generates art. So, in such a world, you can't help asking, are the traditional degrees still relevant at all? So, for generations, degrees have been seen as passports to careers and social mobility, but AI is challenging everything. That is the basics of it. And so, what matters more now, is it the certificate or is it your skill set? Or is it your credentials or your ability to adapt and innovate? So that's what we are going to be talking about in the next 40 minutes out here. The topic will be world of AI versus the world of degrees, right? So we have 10 panelists with us today. My first question is to you, Pravinga. You've been closely watching the impact of AI in business and education. So, how is AI changing the way we look at jobs, careers, and higher education itself? And do you believe degrees and the rest of such things are gradually losing their relevance in this AI-driven era?
So I'll set a little context around what I'm going to say. I'm more of a computer science faculty, so I'd been teaching computer science. Programming was one of the fundamental skills that people have to learn when they come into the university, when they start their undergrad education. And undoubtedly, it's one of the toughest things also for people to learn. So I'll contextualize what I'm going to say about education and learning by taking examples from this, because this is, like you said, extremely important topic, especially given how AI has been shaping, the way we do things. Right? It's fantastic if you kind of look at the AI view. Say it's been 3 years of once ChatGPT was released, that's when I think everyone had exposure to experiencing how these tools work. But then if you look back, AI has been there for 60 years. 60 years back is when the term AI was coined. And since then, there's been a lot of work. And today we are seeing a culmination of all of this. And I'm not surprised with the kind of experience we get with these tools. Now, like you said, incredible quality in terms of what it's able to produce, be it, an email draft to an essay to a very persuasive, argument, to images, to videos, to software code, right? Not just at a level where, it is programs that students write, but if you take a professional in the industry, they go through several hoops of doing software, and it starts from understanding the user requirement all the way to putting that software in ready for production. Throughout this life cycle, AI is able to actually generate incredible high quality elements. Now, having said that, this is where my experiments have, given me a lot of insights in terms of how we use them. So I've seen two groups. One group where there is expertise. You take an expert from the software engineering domain, give them these tools, they're going to accelerate 100x from what they used to do, right? So things that they used to do in 3-4 months get done in a matter of a week. Now you take the same tool, nothing changes, give it to a novice who doesn't have the same kind of expertise, you don't get that output, right? And so what goes in this process, working with the tools, is an incredibly important process. It shows that without that expertise, using these tools is not going to get you any worship, right? So that's where I'll pause, right, and then see.
All right. Yeah, yeah. I think that's a nice way to put it across. I think the way the industry and the learnings or the teachings that you have, I think that's probably something for all of us to pick up a lot more points from you. Professor Nagendra, my question to you is like AI is disruptive. We all, so it's a very disruptive technology or a tool. Degrees still carry weight in society, and we can't deny that, you know. So, from your perspective, what remains irreplaceable about formal degrees, and how can universities adapt their curriculum so that they don't become outdated and it should complement the AI definition that we have?
The way I look at it is, maybe the way the question is asked is into not this question. Okay, yeah, world of AI versus speaking. I don't think it should be versus. If we just see AI and degree, and it actually, if you combine those three words, it complete AI degree, right? So I think again, we cannot make judgments based on our own perceptions, because if you look at it, example like you were saying, way back in 1957, there is somebody by name Alex Otsky. This guy was the youngest ever guy who has written something about artificial toolkits, because his temptation was to create a program for eating a chess master, the Grandmaster support. But it did happen over about 40 years, precisely year 1997. I'm sure all of us know word about it. Deep Blue and IPL. But even before 1997, 1996, they thought they cracked it, and they had a game with in San Francisco with Gab Kasparov. Out of 6 lots, the first lot was won by the computer. So they manipulated chess, but the next 5 were Kasparov. But 1990, in the next 8-9 months, we did make even better. That's a past part of world, and when we've seen idea of artificial. But that's not about it, because I think all the guys, the very fanciful ideas about it. But let me also tell you other side of a story that some of you are interested in, what's wrong with AI. Recently, just about 3 days back, MIT published a study which said that 95%, and it's all available public domain, just Google, you get 95% of the businesses which have deployed this either agentic AI or your AI tools, none of them have received even 2% of their ROI. 2%, less than 2%. So what do we talk? So it's not that AI is going to take over. It's not that. It's just that I think they have to look at in the idea of the way you're holding your mobile phone. What it has done is it has democratized the knowledge, entertainment, whatever we want, right? To the last mile of the person who is living it. Right? The same way, what it has done is, what AI is going to do is going to democratize intelligence. Now it's more longer with in fact, I will say one mistake, saying that maybe the processors would try to substitute professors. That's only difference. Because higher the processor, really that's what NVIDIA is all about, right? So, but there can somebody say that degrees are no homogeneous, none at all, in the sense that it is still an option. For example, like say you look at somebody who's from middle background and then he exposes a quick job. So for somebody who wants a job and therefore he takes a skill and therefore he needs a certification, so that's a growth area of that. But for somebody who wants a career, that guy needs definitely what we call actually the stack. It's the artificial stack or skill stack that we talk. So it's only skill. In fact, suppose I ask all of you, where do you find in Hyderabad the most demanding skill in the world? Where do you get it? Will you believe me? Why the hell would you believe? Will I believe somebody else? I won't believe. But then, where do you have the manifestation of the skills which are high demand in the world? Where do you find it in Hyderabad? The only place where we find in Hyderabad is our feet. You see that Maitriwana? That guy opens a shop at 7 o'clock. Do you see the number of students that go there? No university in Hyderabad and actually patch that. No university. Because every student wants to bunk, right? But then that guy offers the most in-demand skills because you're on the treadmill. They want to make sure that they learn finish the job, get only that skill so that he gets a job. So that's a different story altogether. Now, can this one replace degree? No, I don't think they should. For example, look at him today, right? For example, Washington University. You go see the website. They have something very interesting school. Paul G. Allen School of Computer Science. Paul happens to be the co-founder of Microsoft. But even today, they don't have our Department of Art ingredients. But you go to Cunning Melody, you go to MIT, go to IITs, go to some of the best universities, private universities, they have. Because I think India is very good in catching up. Audit, At the point that we are making, therefore, is that we should not look at is going to replace degree. Degree has its own thing. But like I said, it's basically, it develops. Okay, so when somebody joins the university, right, it's not just about a degree that you get, not at all, right? What you get is the ecosystem, the networking. Because you look at, for example, Suleiman, right? And then the guy who sold DeepMind, a company, by the way, in 2010, he invented. In 2014, he sold to Google. And that's how the deep learning has come from Deep Blue and Deep Mind. These are the two companies. And one is Pura. Deep learning has come from there. So that guy, when he sold to Google, I think he invested about $10 million and he got almost about $400 million. And then Peter Thiel, the founder of LinkedIn, he got almost 5,000% interest, returns. So I think at the point, and he did his PhD in artificial intelligence in 2014 itself, right? In artificial, nobody knew about it. Nobody. Only thing is from November 2022 onwards, why everybody is worried is so much about the fact that the OpenAI actually has commercialized, started monetizing it, but they need money. Right? So therefore, I would like to submit, of course, somebody can violently disagree with me, I'm okay with that, is that fact that it cannot be viewed as substitutes. No way. They have, for example, there's some, like I said, you have a different teacher for that, you have a different teacher for this. So be it. We are okay.
Yeah, totally with you on that. I think from both of you, what you've said is to say that AI always was there. It's just that it has become a terminology we all use so much in today's world. Like you said, it's got the knowledge is democratized to me. It's not anymore the proprietary learning or whatever for one set of people. So that is one part of it. And the fact that AI is the way that you put it across, like aid, if you put it together, it's a graduation, so it complements each other. It's not one against the other in that sense. That's a great point to start with our discussion, Melly. The second question is about the skill versus the credentials here. And that's the heart of a lot of debates. Skills versus credentials, and in today's hiring landscape, because we are talking about students, degrees, what kind of learnings, etc. Yeah, so are skills becoming more important than degrees from a hiring landscape? For companies, or do they in fact complement each other? I'm talking it from a hiring landscape itself, and how do employers really weigh a formal degree versus a kind of demonstrated AI? If I can put it that way, or a tech-based skill. How does employees see it? I'm asking both of you your comments on that.
So I'll reflect on this, and also a couple of thoughts which have come earlier. So if you take a degree program, right? So that's a credential. It's a long-term credential, right? So you go to a certificate program. It could be a smaller credential, a micro credential like you could get. A micro credential could be like, a weekend workshop like what we see next door. That now, what does it require them to do? You show up every day. You follow exactly what the curriculum is. You're challenged with assignments, tasks, and so on. You have challenged with exams where you have to show performance. And then finally, you get a grade for every course. You do a cumulative grade point you had. And ultimately you get a degree and you get recognition for that, right? So it's a process. Now, in the absence of that structure, which is created by the universities, will people thrive? Maybe they will, if they have that sort of a discipline on their own, right? But most of us don't. Yeah. And so we have not seen the world that way. We want to be protected also in some sense. So I think coming out of school, getting into that college, that transition, I think it's a great way for people to get ready for work. And of course, in terms of the relevance, right, the knowledge and skills that are there in the curricula today, are they still relevant? So the way I see it is like, we talked about democratization of intelligence. Everyone has access to these tools right now, just like how people had access to Google. We used to search, now we go chat. There's a conversation that's happening. Now, the critical part is, do people have the ability to ask questions, right? Because without that, it's not going to have a conversation. It's never going to, AI is not going to initiate a conversation with you. You have to do that. That means if you are not critically evaluating what it says, you can't respond back. And so that sort of critical thinking becomes super important. So that's one. Now, in order to do the critical thinking, what skills do you need? Language becomes super important. If you don't have the language articulation, then that falls apart. And then there is domain knowledge. Maybe I want to be a computer scientist, maybe a civil engineer, maybe a doctor or whatever. So that domain expertise comes to play. And then there's one more, which is the computational thinking. So these AI systems are all computational thinking systems, right? Now, if you cannot think computationally, it becomes a little challenging to use these systems, right? So I think there has to be some sort of a transformation in the curricula to address these fundamental skills first,
Right.
so that people are rigorously trained on that. And then you let them study whatever they want, right? And then, everyone may have their own path. Today we have like people fight for, I want to go into the computer science branch. Why are we not able to accommodate everyone who wants to go there? And there is some academic planning that happens in the college. There are resources that are there, and perhaps there's also macroeconomics, which says that we need people with this skill in the market, right? And that also plays a role. I think all of that, if let's say these boundaries are not there, and if people have these fundamental skills, I think universities can really organize education so that anyone can take the path that they really want to pursue.
How do you see the employers looking at skills versus?
Yeah, they should. Yeah. So the employers are struggling themselves right now. They're not fully transformed. They do see a lot of disruption, right, in their own workflows. There are new ways of doing things. I've been closely seeing the software world. There's a lot of acceleration that you can get. So if you think of an employer who wants to recruit people, they want agility, right? Today, because of the rate of change at how things are rapidly progressing, people should be able to pick up these lifelong learning skills, right? They should be agile enough to say that I can give me any problem that you want me to solve, I'll solve it for you. That sort of agility is good, given the foundational skills on top of that. And so we call that as a comb shaped professional. So it looks like a comb, right? So on the top is the foundational skills, which has generative AI or whatever AI skills, apart from the language and everything we talk about. And then you have all these spikes. Every spike is a domain that you have picked up. It could be completely different. And I think that sort of, a metaphor gives that agility. Even for employers, they become very valuable.
Very well put. So, how what is your take on this?
I think we have things. One, the skills, other one, people. I think, there's a very famous say. It says that those who manufacture dependents usually get paid to the work. Now, look at everywhere in the world, right? Everything that human use. This is how it is, like, right? For example, let's say you look at either KST or any system, same thing applies to university with all due respect, we not, right? Because I think what happens there for here in the university, that we continue to have a system where the university is given, some sort of appointment with the students, right? And you look at the story of Steve Jobs, right? And in fact, I'm sure all of us will have heard about that day on this the speech that he gave in Stanford. He lived or he survived only thanks to his concepts, right? Now he visits for a course, usually that's this course, but then he also bored. So much so that one day he came out of the classroom and then he started going around and he saw one professor teaching a calligraphy class, right? And in India, we don't have. What they have is something always non-moderate costs, right? You just went and sat, and that is, I mean, he just fell in love with that course. Nothing, just how to write, nothing else. But then, that became the basis for all that he did. And he never had a degree as such. Like Steve Ballmer. How do I get Steve Ballmer and Bill Gates joined the same school, Stanford. Both of them taught. But then Bill Gates dropped in the middle and then he couldn't complete. But Steve Ballmer completed his degree, came back and joined this company as co-founder. I mean, you will have ample stories. But coming back to the space part of it, for example, it's largely talking about MBA part of it, like the engineering aspects. Now, why would somebody heist, right? It's basically, if I ask you, sir, I forget your names. Wait, yeah, Kamal. Now, suppose I ask you, sir, and let's say you're a vendor with all due respect. Let's say you're selling copy and then ask that customer. Let's say I come to you after this session saying that I want a cup of coffee. What do we, I give you 5 rupees or 10 rupees. And then what happens in that next day? Have the coffee. You're expected to give me, right? Yeah. So let's say I wait for 2 minutes, you don't give me. 3 minutes go by, you don't give me. 3 minutes pass by, you don't give me. After what do we do? I paid money. Yeah. Because I became restless. Yeah. Slowly I become little abusive. All that. Yeah. So what I'm doing is I'm paying money. Basically what you see that I'm paying money and you give me something written. Right. The same thing happens in education. And by the way, education industry is the only industry in the world, and you can contest me for the rest of your life, everybody. You know what his question was? How many minutes in its 60 minutes zone, right? People are zoning in with the faculty. And that's they're all top class students from 21 Ivy League elementary schools. Most grill dice, you know what he has found out after almost 6 months of research, very expensive research? They are zoning in only for 16 minutes of the 60-minute session. You can imagine the rest of it. So where we talk about skills, the kids will learn only when they want it, because they all get up for something else. Yeah. So therefore, the skills part that we learn about, for example, let's say somebody is doing MBA and let's say especially in finance. Now, how do we add skill part of it? Right? For example, let's say you're talking about fintech. Yeah, you have to have marketing now. Marketing is no longer the traditional market as well. Now we are talking about martech. Everywhere you're talking about. Now, how do you do that? That's what the institutions have to be. That's why I said you have to marry the skills part of skills. Unfortunately, somebody else doing it, right? And then you have KPMPs, PWMs is the called IPMs of the word. I mean, they're good. But the point is that unless until there is a what do you call cascading effect, it won't happen. And that's the reason why Stammy would say that the guy who manufactured dependency usually get been. So it's like sorry to use the word, it's like a mafia. It is, right? Because you don't allow other people to come in there. Yeah.
Yes, I reflect on your rebellious thoughts here. So, and it's quite connecting to, it's definitely a lot more time is required possibly to explore deeper into it. And that's quite, for example, I used to work in the beginning of mobile phone where it started also. We used to work a lot in terms of making somebody to make a call from the mobile, but so expensive that time to develop that category. And sometimes when I look back, what do you regret in certain things? How do you take it back from them? You've given them, you made them to use it. You put all kinds of things possible. You use psychology, pricing, everything, all marketing related things. Now you're struggling to, for example, the Vodafone campaign which said, look up. The service which they provide, they're asking people to look up as, because people are always like this. Everybody is like this all the time. So can you look up? That's the kind of, and when I go to school, sometimes I ask children, what have you heard of Apple? Everybody says Apple, and the Apple they refer to is a mobile phone. You ask about that BlackBerry, they say it's, the other mobile phone. I said, it used to be a fruit. Do you know it was supposed to be a fruit, and these technologies were supposed to simplify things, but unfortunately, the way it is complicating our life is something I think people are figuring it out. That's a different discussion altogether. The point which I want to take it forward is about the students' mindset here, the perspective from the students for all the Gen Z learners today. Should the focus be on pursuing, because you meet them on a regular basis? Do you think the focus should be on pursuing advanced degrees or on building their own portfolios, projects, proof of concept, skills, And related to AI, also, because that's emerging, and how early do you think this balance should be introduced, right from schools or during UG programs? No, that's from a student perspective when you look at it, because you interact with them on a vector.
I think they should do all of that. Okay, right. So they should get a good credential for sure, because that's a way to get recognition, right? In terms of how students are learning to them, I've been in too many debates in the recent times where universities and the teaching faculty, we say that there's existential crisis for how we teach today in class, right? And it's not going to work anymore. And the reason is the way students are actually working on assignments and how we grade them, I think, is now flawed given how AI is helping them in completing their assignments. So we want to kind of start flipping that around. And that's one of the things that we're doing, because it's super important. I think we talked about skills being very important for people to acquire. It's not easy to acquire skills. It requires incredible amount of time. Like if you go to learning science research, there are 4 stages of learning skills, right? The 4th stage is mastery. You'll never get that mastery in college. But then you'll at least get to stage 3 if you have done well. And what are these stages? 1, I don't know that the skill exists is the first stage. I'm in a happy place. I don't know it, so I'm not worried about it. The second stage is I know that I don't know it. Now I'm worried because everyone has to, right? The third stage is where I'm actually trying to acquire that skill. Right? And acquisition of the skill is okay. You're still you need support to apply the skill, but at least you're aware, you're kind of working with it. Mastery is like you wake them up at 3 a.m. in the morning, they'll do it without even thinking about it, right? So that's why I said mastery takes much longer. But at least if colleges can actually design learning so that they get to stage 3 in a lot of skills, I think it's going to be very valuable for the students. Now, having said that, how is the student responding to that, right? So because there is deadline pressure, so I'll give you some numbers. This is a programming course that we teach at Carnegie Mellon. 1,000 students take the course. This is the first programming course that they take. 3, 4, 5 years back, it used to be 8 just before the deadline of the assignments. 18 hours is the average time that students work on the assignment. We know that because there are tools which give us the data in terms of how much time they spend on it. Assignments are hard, but they work on it. The effort is there. And deadlines are important, right? And just before the deadline, a lot of work happens. Now, the average time has gone down to 6 hours. How did that happen? Obviously, it is generative AI, right? They use these chat GPT, they produce. So now we are challenged saying, how do we create problems that AI cannot actually produce answers for? Not very easy, right? It's extremely hard to do that. And so we are saying that, okay, our evaluation earlier was they submit the deliverable and we go grade that. Now we are saying that we don't want to do that anymore. We say that we want to measure how students are actually producing the deliverable. What is their thinking, right? Their think aloud. So if I do that sort of measurement, right? Take an example. If as a professor I ask them to write some code, they have to write code and submit it. They have to start with a blank slate. They have to type in every key, character, every keyword that is there in the program. They will test it. They will go through that process multiple times and then they submit. That's why it used to take 18 hours for them to do it. It's just that no one is evaluating that process. Now you start shifting the process to saying, I don't care about what you produced. Tell me how you produced it, right? And have conversations around that. A lot of students are struggling today. And that's the reality. That's the existential crisis we've been talking about, right? So our flip is to say that we need to not just think about what we are teaching in the curricula, but we need to focus a lot more on how are we teaching and how people are learning. I think those two aspects need a lot of work in the universities. I think that's when we might see a better learning outcomes. Today we are struggling to achieve those learning outcomes with the kids. And you can't blame them because it's there, right? And they'll use it.
So, what is your take?
I think I can add. I would put it this way that somewhere I think we get stung with this idea of skills. It's just not a lot. It's undifferentiated all the industries now, right? There are knowledge-driven industry. For example, it's somebody who wants to work for pharmaceutical. Now, what's the skill and what's the knowledge there? For example, consulting industry, right? There are industries. I mean, you look at, I think the 63 industries in the world, as well, at least as far as the Fortune 500 is concerned. And you analyze all of them because everybody has to get into job. One of those industries, there's no doubt about it. Nothing outside. So if you analyze that one, that will give you an answer. The answer is that there are knowledge-driven industries, there are skill-driven industries, and definitely there's only the service-driven industry, right? For example, let's say somebody who want to work like a barista in a Starbucks. What kind of skill does he need? First of all, he has to go with the attitude and they serve somebody else. Now, if we start throwing your attitude around there, then you're gone. You don't build a company like that, right? So therefore, I think skills are there. There's no doubt about it. Skills are important. But then the way it has to be done is what kind of skills? For example, if I ask all of you, is there any course that I have not seen, any top course, let's say top 10 business schools in the country? Is there any business school in the country or engineering college top 10, which actually teaches the most important skill for anybody in every human being is, right, about the art of failure? Everybody is talking about success, boss. That's right. But then what happens when you fail? The only option people expect or do is suicide. What are we talking about? So now the question is, how do I teach the failure as a skill? The only way I can teach is sports. There's nothing else. There's nothing else. No substitute for teaching a failure. The only thing is that please ask make it a part of curriculum, the sports part of it. Because in that, either one guy wins, other lose. There's no doubts.
Yes, yeah.
Because in others, you can game it, but not in scopes, right? Because you have only two kids. So I think the skills undoubtedly yes, but I think we don't know where we're focusing because each Chinese, I think we need to look at, and on their mental faculties blows more good of time. The more we pressurize, we are talking about 6 candidates, and what are we talking about? That's not how it is, right? You took, for example, let's say, you look at Benjamin Franklin. You look at anybody, Vishweshwaraya here in Infosys, co-founders, 7 of them. Did they start? They took about 3 years to get the first telephone. That's what it is like. So therefore, I think we're not talking about the skills alone. I mean, the skills, there's no doubt about it. But please allow the mathematically person. We are trying to put so much pressure on the kids. And in example, let's say you look at the curriculums. Now, what is being taught in MBA is being taught in BP. Because of pressure, because of competition. What do we form it? And then now look at, by the way, you look at least somewhere, we have that research, at least I can tell you. Look at the curriculum of top 50 engineering colleges in the country, top 15 to the IITs and ISC, whatever they call it, top 50. And take any specific program, let's say BTech Computer Science. You analyze, and now that with the help of Big Tech, with the ChatGPT and all that, it will give you no time. And we have done it. You analyze the BTech curriculum of all these top 50 schools, more or less it is shaped. Yeah. More or less. Then how come the credentials that you're talking about, all of them are coming out with this Java saying that BTech Computer Science. But how come one guy is given a more, he's shown a different, what you call window, and other is shown a different window? That is because that's the fact that I think the way the curriculum is still. So the curriculum has because everybody goes to get the problem, syllabus versus curriculum. Syllabus, everyone know it was. So we want curriculum. That means it must address a business problem or a skill that you're talking about. So I think undoubtedly skills are important. The way we have to deliver is that how embed in the correct. And in the intersects, I would only say one solution. All that why, and that is, can you flip the classroom now? Snap to flip the nozzle. Because again, going back to what I said, the universities, the business schools, those colleges, they give the appointment to the student. Well, this is the curriculum. This has been delivered in so much time. So we are putting them at rest here. If somebody wants to say, sir, can I take this course next month? No, you can't take. It's a suicidal for kids because unless mentally he has, because every child is not equal, sir. Every child has his own mental faculties too. No, look at it. Somebody might fall in love with the subject maybe after 2 years. Somebody might have understood this one if fall in love with the subject maybe 5 years, but we don't know.
Right.
That's why I think the best schools in the world, I mean, very few that I can talk about, is they actually do the profiling of the learner and then pitch in the course. But we don't do that. It looks very idealistic. It's not idealistic. That's it. Yeah, it is.
Yeah. I think interesting to see how you need to flip how you look at things is, I'm sure, executive wishes. This is something, the way did you do it, than seeing what they have taken or showed as an output there makes it. I recently had an example of going to one of the universities and talking about sales to them. So I had shared a lot of process of how life's, scenarios how sales are done. And it was all about how you question.
Yeah.
The right kind of questions at the right scenarios, context, how do you connect? That's where your learning comes into play. So thereby you keep asking the right questions, which is what we're training all the intelligence, what we're talking, in the artificial space we're talking here. At the end of it, one student got up and asked me, sir, I wanted to ask you something. How do you sell a pen? I wanted to ask this in the beginning because you're coming to take a sales-oriented session, but now I know it is all about the right questions you ask, so I don't want to ask that question. So I think flipping is one of the ways to really look into how they would want to look at. So the next question, before I take it, some questions to the audience is about looking ahead from a future perspective. Let's say 10 years, 5 years, 10 years. Do you see this AI? We're talking AI still, and replacing some of those degrees altogether and redefining the value of the degrees because of the AI? Or, are they going to create an entirely new learning pathways? And if you're given one kind of a piece of advice to the students who are today looking at AI versus degree and all that, what would be that in that context?
I've seen a couple of patterns here. One, there's this online program from IIT Madras, data science, right? They give a PS in data science. I see a lot of students who are enrolled in other, on-campus programs, and parallelly they are also enrolled in the online program. So which means by the time they complete, they get 2 degrees. Is that allowed? Absolutely. Today you're at that age where there's abundance of resources, learning resources around and opportunities. Right? So I think, if you think about it, if the college is say from 8 a.m. to 3 p.m., that's done. You get your job done and then get on to learning things, which you would otherwise not be part of the curriculum. So taking ownership for what you want to become and what skills. Like if that goal is there, saying this is where I want to be, working backwards from there is very easy. I was talking to one of the students who was in the builder workshop. So he came and said, I want to build this AI model working, using OpenAI or something is too expensive. So I want to build something on my own. Tell me all the subjects that are needed to learn. And I said, I don't know. But then I could tell you how you can figure it up, right? And so when I said, first start, he has a decent problem that he wants to solve. I said, go ask GPT saying, how do I solve it? It'll give you a list of things to do. Put a check mark against everything that you know and things that you don't know. For things that you don't know, ask GPT to explain. If you're not happy with that, go online, look for some of these online courses. So, this requires agency, right? You're essentially, instead of being in an autopilot mode where you're assuming that your university or teachers or someone is going to come and teach you, you get into an autopilot, move from an autopilot to actually the driving seat and control your app, right? That I think is the most important skill people should have, not just people who are in the colleges and so on, but everyone, including people who are working, because that I think will bring a lot more agility. Once you learn how to learn, the tools are there. It's just about how you spend that time.
Think for I said I will say, I mean, if I understood your question,
It's basically how do you get your students future-proof in an AI world, and how do they? What would be solid piece of advice?
say one is it's very important for someone to say that when choose and to give a list of things is going to be suicide, nothing less than that. Because everybody knows what they want, right? But the big question, would the so-called AI, etc., would they obliterate the so-called degrees? No, at least not of the 5 days. I can't think beyond that. The reason is that they, like I again said, the people who have manufactured, for example, let's say we have now, look at IT industry, right? You have this open source books, like, but someone has introduced, everybody thought, so this was scared, and then they said this one, right? Now, simple question is that whole of the world, look at all of the world, the newspaper industry is just going down, including Washington or New York Times, Wall Street, everything. But how come in India, the print newspaper, especially what happened, they're actually showing year on year growth about 14%. How is it possible? Because you see this news today. Today you're seeing all the news. Then why people are still buying newspaper tomorrow? The reason is again same thing, because newspapers like televisions is a two-sided market, because you tend to make money from both the different dynamics altogether. So I don't think it's going to be obliterated. Degrees are not going to be obliterated. One thing is this, like I said sometime back, what you develop up is something called as a skill stack now. The skills are different, stack is different now, real now. But I think what is going to be future-proofing, if I have to say it, I think the universities will start feeling the pitch, because they start, look at the how many BTech seats in Tembanan are going begging. They're not able to fill. But they say, oh, hang on, I think I can as well learn something here and then get a job. Then ultimately, that's what it is meant for. So having said that, I think the universities that are absolutely up the game in terms of building that skills stack, because right now, like you said, skills are different, and this the stacks are different. But the moment you combine them, and that's what everybody's talking about, and I think that's going to be the winning game for everyone.
You want to come to it? You ready?
Well, no, I think in terms of the stackable skills, if you're led by the time you graduate on how to build a stack for yourself, the skill stack, then you're ready, to take on the world. And one other thing which I may have missed from earlier is there are ample opportunities for you to go and get internships and some real work done. So I think participating in those, in addition formal learning, is another way to build, and portfolios there becomes super important. And that portfolio could be a manifestation of the stack in terms of what experiences I've gained, what knowledge I have, and what skills I've acquired.
But I must add one very caution, sir, with all due respects. I think when I see very dangerous trend, with all the respect, startups or even big companies, but debuting startups, but I see that, I've seen it happening. Multiple, like a lot of parents, students, they hire this very good students.
Right.
And what they do is they say the internship is 6 months, and they extend it to another 3 months, another 3 months, 1 year, it's over. So they're getting at a very high quality resource at a very, very deadly paid. And then after, what do they do? They confirm. I've seen it happen. I can't tell you how many stories. In fact, we all read a case study of that. That's very painful. Exploitation. It is.
Yeah, I think, then some of those things or the challenges that the students face in that space.
That's because supply demand.
That's yes, so true. So just to take your point, I used to work in print for 15 years, and I moved from digital to radio to print. So when I joined print, the question was, the company which hired me was asked, why are you coming to a print at the time when everybody's talking about its debt? And in 15 years now, it is still going, and revenues are still probably, we've learned to exist along with the rest of the media. That's about. So if you talk about AI also, learning, all these things, I think all complement to each other. And how do you find the right balance of things? Your appetite to one might be more at that point in time, but then definitely all these are going to be, it's not about one totally replacing the rest here.